Okay, so how did I Ready go? You guys should have two now. One is called figurative language. One is called understanding figurative language. The understanding figurative language is due Tuesday. Juliet went okay for you. Melinda, cool. I found that if it's not working on your computers, just give it some time, maybe go back in a couple hours. I think some of the online systems are just getting overwhelmed because they weren't designed to have like an entire country using them all at once.
What about the iPad that won't let you
screen
go on?
So an iPad should work, but you have to download the Clever app and the iReady app. And so then you log in using the Clever app, click on iReady and Clever, and it should open the iReady app. It's super fun and complicated.
Or you could just use a computer.
Or you use a computer. It does not seem to work on smartphones. And there are some tablets it's not going to work on because it's got like very specific browsers that it uses.
And when your brother's using your grandparents' computer when you need it,
well, I would say for iReady, make sure you guys are just kind of spacing out that time. That's why I'm giving you so many days to complete it. You should be okay to arrange time.
What you do is kick out Joshua off of the computer
Okay.
and be like,
you get this much time on the computer.
You know, you gotta just do your best to make it work, Melinda. That's all I can tell you.
All right. Question.
Yeah.
Are we going to read Out of the Dust?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. So I muted you all just because there was some background noise. Did anyone have issues with iReady? Okay, so make sure you guys go on there and complete those 2 assignments before Tuesday, and hopefully everything will work out. Lily? I can't unmute
I
you.
had a little trouble with iReady because it kept telling me that my login wasn't right, but I logged into Clever and iReady with the stuff.
You always have to get there through Clever. I literally don't know another way.
Yeah, I went through with Clever. I logged in with my account information, and then I went on to iReady, and it didn't work. And I logged into iReady.
I would say if it doesn't work, try again in a couple hours.
Okay.
There are just lots of things that are being difficult. Like, I don't know if your parents are using Dojo much, but there are times when Dojo just like completely quits working. So that's super fun.
Like Google Classroom, too many people are using it, so nothing works.
Exactly. Everything's slow. So these companies are having to go back and like up their whatevers. I don't know. That's not my field. So I don't know what it's called. But there's like alerts every time I get on iReady now. There's like an alert that's like, this is slow, and they're recommending we post work like a week in advance. Whatever. We'll figure out the weirdness eventually. Okay, for Out of the Dust today, we're going to talk about drawing conclusions. And when I say drawing conclusions, this time I don't actually mean physically drawing anything. So, but I do mean coming to a conclusion about something. So we're not going to draw, I don't think, today. But what we are going to talk about is coming up with a conclusion. So drawing a conclusion is helps you deepen, wow, I can talk today. Helps deepen your understanding of what's happening in this story. So in order to draw a conclusion, you're using the story clues, so text evidence, and your background knowledge, so things that you know, and you're coming up with a conclusion. And these are some things you can use when you're writing or talking, little words that I can't think of the meaning. It'll come to me. Anyway, these are beginnings that you could use when you're talking about it. This makes me think. So if I was like, hey, what is some evidence? What do you think Billy Joe is feeling about her mom? And you guys could say, the character feels really sad. She's missing her mom a lot. I noticed this when she said she couldn't go to the mom's piano and play her mom's piano anymore. And that makes me think that she's really upset, because you wouldn't want to play your mom's piano if you really, really miss her, because she died in a horrific fire accident. Okay, so when you're making conclusions, you're going to use things like predictions and inferences and your text evidence to make it even stronger, to make it more backed up with all of these evidence, all the evidence and all the conclusion, or all of the predicting and the inferring. Like, that just makes it so much stronger when you use those things. So this is pretty basic, that we're going to look at evidence and use what we know to come to a conclusion about what's going on in the story. So a couple of things I wanted to talk about from Winter 1935. This was a pretty long chapter. There is this part on dust pneumonia. There is a whole poem on dust pneumonia. Do you guys know what pneumonia is in general? Just like regular old pneumonia? Nobody? Yeah, Miriam.
It's when, like, so you're like open in like some type of space, and it could like go into your lungs.
What is it?
The like bacteria and germs and everything.
Yeah.
Yes.
Peter.
Pneumonia is when you have excess mucus in your lungs and it clogs your air passages and it's harder to breathe.
Yep, that's exactly it. So dust pneumonia is when you have too much dust in your lungs. So this poem, it really got me, I thought, because it talks about these two people that kind of have this fun relationship. They tease each other. Guys, stop using the chat. You guys are just sending weird stuff. So dust pneumonia is when there's so much dust in someone's lungs that they can't breathe well anymore. So this one talked about Pete Guyman drove in with a truck full of produce. He joked with Caleb Hardley, Mr. Hardley's son, while they unloaded eggs and ice cream down at the store. Pete Guyman teased Caleb Hardley about the Wildcats losing to Hooker. So they're like talking about sports teams, like Caleb's sports team lost. Caleb teased Pete Guyman about his wheezy truck sucking in dust. Last Friday, Pete Guyman took ill with dust pneumonia. Nobody knew how to keep the produce truck on the road. It sat filled with turkeys and heavy hens waiting for delivery. It sat out in front of Pete's drafty shack and sits there still, the cream curdling, the apples going soft, because a couple hours ago, Pete Guyman died. Mr. Hardley was already on the phone to a new produce supplier before evening. He had people in his store, no food to sell them. His boy Caleb slammed the basketball against the side of the house until Caleb's ma yelled for him to quit. And late that night, a truck rattled up to the store with colored springs and dozens of hens, filthy eggs, and a driver with no interest whatsoever in young Caleb Harley or his precious Wildcats. So this is the part that got me. This the driver with no interest whatsoever. So Caleb, this young kid, has this like relationship with the delivery guy at his dad's store, and now nothing. And to me, that was just the mood of that was just so sad. These last 3 lines. The other one I wanted to read to you guys was The Dust Storm. I thought this poem had a lot going on, especially with Billy Joe, because she comes to a lot of realizations in this poem. Lily, did you have something you wanted to say?
Hmm?
Your your little hand was raised on the thingy.
Oh, oops.
That's okay.
I was going to answer your question of what is pneumonia, and I guess I forgot to lower it.
Oh, no big deal. Okay, Dust Storm.
What page are we on?
In the actual book or in the PDF?
Book.
In the book, 142.
I'm on 71.
I never would have gone to see the show if I had known a storm like this would come. I didn't know when going in, but coming out, a darker night I'd never seen. I bumped into a box beside the palace door and scraped my shins, then tripped on something in my path, I don't know what, and walked into a phone pole, bruised my cheek. So even just this bit right here, it is so dark and hard to see that she's just running into stuff. Like she can't see far enough in front of her face to know that she's about to walk into a pole. Martha, I don't know what the PDF's issue is, so we'll talk about that a little later.
Use the link, it works much better.
What link? I think you're muted, Lily.
In Google Classroom, in the Out of the Dust PDF, there's a link. It's the second thing.
Look at me, I'm so smart. This one? Or this one? This one. Dude, you're muted. I don't know what you're saying.
That was the one I found worked better.
Okay, so try this one. Those of you that can't make the PDF one work, just click the link. It should take you there. So to me, I have no personal reference to being somewhere that is that dark, where you can't see even far enough in front of you to know that you're about to walk into a phone pole. To me, that is kind of a big deal. The first car that I met was sideways in the road, bowed down, my eyes near shut, trying to keep the dust out. I saw his headlights just before I reached them. The driver called me over and I felt my way, following his voice. He asked me how I kept the road. So how does she stay on the road? How does she know like where the road is? I feel it with my feet, I shouted over the roaring wind. I walk along the edge, 1 foot on the road, 1 on the shoulder. And desperate to get home, he straightened out his car and straddled tires on the road and off, and slowly pulled away. I kept along. I know that there were others on the road. From time to time, I'd hear someone cry out. Their voices rose like ghosts on the howling wind. No one could see. I stopped at a neighbor's just to catch my breath and make my way from town out to our farm. Everyone said to stay, but I guessed my father would come out to find me if I didn't show and get himself lost in the raging dust and maybe die. And I didn't want that burden on my soul. So she's going home because she's worried that her father would die in this storm coming out to look for her. And she's like, I don't want to be the reason he's dead. Brown earth rained down from the sky. I could not catch my breath. The way the dust pressed on my chest and wouldn't stop. The dirt blew down so thick it scratched my eyes and stung my tender skin. It plugged my nose and filled inside my mouth. No matter how I pressed my lips together, the dust made muddy tracks across my tongue. I love this imagery that she creates right here, the muddy tracks across my tongue. Like, just think about that. Think about when you guys eat like blue candy or green frosting on a cupcake and it colors your tongue. She's got streaks of dust on her tongue. So weird. But I kept on spitting out mud, covering my mouth, clamping my nose, the dust stinging the raw and open stripes of scarring on my hand. And after some 3 hours, I made it home. Inside, I found my father's note that said he'd gone to find me, and if I should get home, to just stay put. I hollered out the front door and the back. He didn't hear. I didn't think he would. The wind took my voice and busted it into 1,000 pieces, so small the sound blew out over Ma and Franklin's grave, thinner than a sigh. I think that is also another really interesting piece of imagery, how she's comparing the wind and she's personifying it, saying it's like breaking up her voice. So it's just almost a nothing when it's floating out. I waited for my father through the night, coughing up dust, cleaning dust out of my ears, rinsing my mouth, blowing mud out my nose. Joe de LaFleur stopped by around 4 to tell me they found one boy tangled in barbed wire fence, another smothered in a drift of dust. After Joe left, I thought of the famous Lindberghs and how their baby was killed and never came back to them. I wondered if my father would come back. He blew in around 6 a.m. It hurt, the sight of him brown with dirt, his eyes as red as raw meat, his feet bruised from walking in worn shoes, stepping where he couldn't see, on things that bit and cut into his flesh. I tried to scare up something we could eat, but couldn't keep the table clear of dust. Everything I set down for our breakfast was covered before we took a bite. And so we chewed the grit and swallowed. And I thought of the cattle dead from mud in their lungs. And I thought of the tractor buried up to the steering wheel and Pete Guyman. And I couldn't even recognize the man sitting across from me, sitting in his chair. His red hair gray and stiff with dust, his face deep lines of dust, his teeth streaked brown with dust. I turned the plates and glasses upside down, crawled into bed, and slept. Why do you think she says that it hurt the sight of him? Like seeing him hurt her. Why do you think it hurt her? Anybody?
Me. It kind of like it doesn't physically hurt her, but it like makes her feel bad because like she couldn't find him and like he wouldn't be hurting if she'd found him, so it makes her feel bad.
Right. Jojo, do you want to add more?
She also doesn't want it to be her fault if he were to get hurt.
Yeah. Yeah, because who does she blame for her mom? Him, but also kind of herself. Because in the end, she is the one that threw the kerosene. And then there was one poem where she talks about like scrubbing the floors, and when she got her test scores back, she really wished she could hear her mom say, "I knew you could do it," or "I knew you could," or "I knew you would," whatever it was her mom says. And when she heard that the first time, when she said that, she was like, why can't she say more than that? That's annoying. And now all she wants is to hear that. Again, like here's another poem about how much she misses her mom. How much she would like to just be near her for a minute. Okay. So there's a lot of dust in this poem. I don't know if you guys noticed that. And so this symbol of dust keeps coming up and keeps reappearing. So what do you think is going to become of Billy Joe and her father as things move forward? Anybody?
I mean, everybody dies at some point.
Fair. Yes. Do we think they're all just gonna die by the end of this?
No.
Maybe.
I mean,
Like, bad ending, but it could be the ending. They die.
I mean, like,
I don't think so.
you kind of mess
think
up if you write a book where all the people die.
Yeah. That's a good point.
They could go to not Carolina, California,
Why do you think, Nick, they would go to California?
because some people went to California where there was no dust.
Oh, Madam Audibre,
Yeah.
my grandma, she was excited that I was reading the Dust Bowl, or Out of the Dust, and she showed me some stuff about it, and it would actually be very bad if they went to California because they would be put into labor camps, because like the people in California think that they're just coming into their land.
Mm-hmm. That's crazy. I didn't know that. That's really interesting. So they have an idea that, oh, it's going to be so much better. We're going to be able to farm our own land and it's going to be great. And instead it's like, nope, you can go work for these people.
Yeah, and my grandma showed me a really sad song by some dude. I don't know his name.
Yeah. Okay. So, how have things changed in Billy Joe's town?
Death has occurred.
Lots of death. Lots of people have died. Yeah. Anything else?
The dust is really bad.
The dust is getting really bad. What about people's crops? Jude, go ahead.
People's crops are getting like pulled out of the ground and stuff, and like they're getting killed.
Yep.
And also like the dust is getting really bad, and people are getting more like worried about it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because then they can't see stuff, so it's more dangerous to be doing stuff like driving.
Exactly. Okay, so we're going to look at the next section, Spring 1935. We're going to read a couple poems. Okay. Heartsick. The hard part is, in spite of everything, if I had any boy court me, it'd be Mad Dog Craddock. So do you guys know what court means? Like if any boy was to come like try to be her boyfriend. she would want it to be Mad Dog. But Mad Dog can have any girl. Why would he want me? I'm so restless. My father asks what's going on with me. I storm up to my room, leaving him alone, standing in the kitchen. If Ma was here, she would come up and listen, and then later she would curl beside my father and assure him that everything was all right, and soothe him into his farmer's sleep. My father and I, we can't soothe each other. I'm too young, he's too old, and we don't know how to talk anymore, if we ever did. April 1935. Skin. My father has a raised spot on the side of his nose that was never there before and won't go away. There's another on his cheek and 2 more on his neck. And I wonder why the heck he is fooling around. He knows what it is. His father had those spots too. Does anyone have a prediction what she's talking about?
Is it some kind of disease?
Probably skin cancer.
Or
Samuel?
lymphoma. Or lymphoma.
Moles?
What?
Moles? Maybe?
Yeah, they're probably moles, but they show up out of nowhere, so it makes it seem like cancerous moles, like
Yeah.
melanoma.
Mr. Ferris said in health class. Well, in health class, he said that that like spots on your skin is cancer.
It can be.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ella, did you have something to add? No? Okay. So
I was talking, but I was muted.
what did you want to add?
It depends on technically how big the bumps were, because they could be lymphoma if they were bigger, but it could also be like baby lymphomas, like tiny lymphomas.
Yeah, but that's also a type of cancer. So what we're likely talking about is cancer. And she's like, I don't understand why he's not doing anything about this. Regrets. I never go by Arlie's anymore. Still, every week he comes to school to teach, and sometimes I bump into Vera or Miller Rice or Mad Dog. They're always kind. They ask after my father. They ask how my hands are feeling. I cross my arms in front of me tight so my scars won't show. These days, Mad Dog looks at me halfway between picking a fight and kindness. He walks with me away some afternoons, never says a word. He's quiet once the other girls go off. I've had enough of quiet men. I ought to keep clear of Mad Dog, but I don't. So they're trying to be nice to her, but they also like don't know how to act around her because she can't play anymore. And that was like their thing, like the thing that Arlie and Vera and Mad Dog and Billy Joe all did together was play. Fire on the rails. I hate fire. Hate it. But the entire Oklahoma panhandle is so dry. Everything is going to open up in flames. I feel like that should be flames. Yeah, that should be flames. Everything is going up in flames. Everything too ready to ignite. Last week, the school caught fire. Damage was light on account of it being caught early. Most kids joked about it the next day, but it terrified me. I could hardly go back in the building. And this week, why is this fire thing terrifying her?
Because it kills her mom.
Yep. And this week, 3 boxcars in the train yard burned to ash. Jim Coyne and Harry Kessler spotted the fire, and that was a miracle considering the fierceness of the dust storm at the time. Can you imagine this? A fire and a dust storm at the same time. The fire boys tore over, but they couldn't put the blaze out without water, and water is exactly what they didn't have. So they separated the burning cars and moved them down a siding, away from any little thing that might catch if the flames hopped. It was all they talked about at school. The dust blew, they say. So you think the fire would have smothered the fire out. But the flames, crazy in the wind, licked at the wooden frames of the 3 boxcars until nothing remained but warped metal and twisted rails, scorched dirt, and charred tires. No one talks about fire right to my face. They can't forget how fire changed my life. But I hear them talking anyway. April 1935. What is dust and fire mean to Billy Joe, like on a different level than just the obvious, like it killed her mom? And what is it starting to represent in her life? Go ahead, Ella.
Trauma.
Yeah. Can you dive into that a little bit deeper?
I don't know.
Okay, well, so there's the obvious trauma of like her mom's death.
Yeah.
What else is traumatizing? Like
Her dad,
from
like from her dad in the dust.
her dad being caught in the dust, sure.
Um,
Lily?
The fact that she almost could have gotten killed too, and it
Yeah.
also killed her baby brother.
Maybe, maybe because it's like destroying everything she loves.
Yeah, the dust and the fire, right? Like,
the
go
the
ahead.
dust and the fire, it's like from her point of view, the dust and fire is like the enemy. Like,
Yeah.
yeah.
They're constantly fighting against dust, and now because it's so dry, they're fighting against fire in the dust with no water because it's so dry. Like it's just like this cyclical thing they can't get out of, and unless there's rain, it's not going to get any better. The mail train. They promised through rain, heat, snow, and gloom, but they never said anything about dust. And so the mail got stuck for hours, for days on the Santa Fe because mountains of dust had blown over the tracks, because blizzards of dust blocked the way. And all that time, as the dust beat down on the cars, a letter was waiting inside a mailbag. A letter from my Aunt Ellis, my father's sister, written just to me, inviting me to live with her in Lubbock. I want to get out of here, but not to Aunt Ellis and not to Lubbock, Texas. My father didn't say much when I asked what I should do. Let's wait and see, he said. What's that supposed to mean? Remember in this poem up here about Mad Dog, she said, I've had enough of quiet men. Who's the other quiet man in her life?
Her dad.
Yeah, her dad. They don't talk. She doesn't know what to say to him. He doesn't know what to say to her. She used to talk to her mom. She had a relationship with her mom. Her dad just farmed. Migrants. We'll be back when the rain comes, they say, pulling away with all they own, straining the springs of their motor cars. Don't forget us. And so they go, fleeing the blowing dust, fleeing the fields of brown-tipped wheat, barely ankle-high, and sparse as the hair on a dog's belly. We'll be back, they say, pulling away towards Texas, Arkansas, where they can rent a farm, pull in enough cash, maybe start again. We'll be back when it rains, they say, setting out with their bed springs and mattresses, their cook stoves and dishes, their kitchen tables and their milk goats tied to their running boards and rickety cages, setting out for California, where even though they say they'll come back, they just might stay. But there are so many leaving. How can I remember them all? Blankets of black. On the first clear day, we stagger out of our caves of dust into the sunlight, turning our faces to the big blue sky. On the second clear day, we believed the worst was over at last. We flocked outside, traded in town, going to stores and coming out, only to find the air still clear and gentle, great for each easy breath. What does this remind you of? Is anyone currently being reminded of how we're all stuck in our homes?
Mm-hmm.
And one day we're going to stagger out of our caves of Corona into the sunlight, trading in the town. We're gonna go shopping and go out to dinner. On the third clear day, summer came in April, and the churches opened their arms to all comers, and all comers came. After church, folks headed for picnics, car trips. No one could stay inside. My father and I argued about the funeral of Grandma Lucas, who truly was no relation, but we ended up going anyway, driving down the road in a procession to Texahoma. 6 miles out of town, the air turned cold. Birds beat their wings. Everywhere you looked, whole necks dropping out of the sky, crowding on the fence post. I was sulking in the truck beside my father when heaven's shadow crept across the plains, a black cloud, big and silent as Montana, boiling on the horizon and barreling towards us. More birds tumbled from the sky, frantically keeping ahead of the dust. We watched as the storm swallowed the light. The sky turned from blue to black. Night descended in an instant, and the dust was on us. The wind screamed, the blowing dirt ran so thick I couldn't see the brim of my hat as we plunged from the truck, fleeing. The dust swarmed like it had never swarmed before. My father groped for my hand, pulled me away from the truck. We ran. A blind pitching toward the shelter of a small house, almost invisible, our hands tight together, running toward the ghostly door, pounding on it with desperation. A woman opened her home to us, all of us, not just me and my father, but the entire funeral procession. One after another, we tumbled inside, gasping, our lungs burning for want of air. All the lamps were lit against the dark, the house dazed by dust, gazed weakly out. The walls shook in the howling wind. We helped tack up sheets on the windows and doors to keep the dust down. Cars and trucks unable to go on, their ignitions shorted out by the static electricity, opened up to let out more passengers who stumbled for shelter. One family came in clutched together, their paw divining the path with a long wooden rod. If it hadn't been for the company, this storm would have broken us completely. Broken us more thoroughly than the plow had broken the Oklahoma sod, more thoroughly than my burns had broken the ease of my hands. But for the sake of the crowd and the hospitality of the home that sheltered us, we held on. We waited, sitting or standing, breathing through wet cloths as the fog of dust filled the room and settled slowly over us. When it let up a bit, some went on to bury Grandma Lucas. But my father and I, we cleaned the thick layer of grime off the truck, pulled out of the procession, and headed home, creeping slowly along the dust-mounded road. When we got back, we found the barn half covered in dunes. I couldn't tell which rise of dust was Ma and Franklin's grave. The front door hung open, blown in by the wind. Dust lay 2 feet deep in ripply waves across the parlor floor. Dust blanketed the cook stove, the icebox, the kitchen chairs, everything deep in dust. And the piano buried in dust. Well, I started to shovel. My father went out to the barn. When he came back, and when I asked, he said the animals weren't good, and the tractor was dusted out. And I said, it's a wonder the truck got us home. I should have held my tongue. When he tried starting the truck again, it wouldn't turn over. So, holy cow, that was terrible. Why did the truck not start? And what does the tractor mean it was dusted out?
Because there's dust in the engines.
Yeah. Nick, did you have something?
I was gonna say the same thing.
Okay. What about the animals? Think about how much their barn was half covered in dunes of dust. So, what do you think is going to happen to the animals? Lily? Lily, I think you're muted.
I was going to say the animals would probably die, and also I was going to say about the truck, dust would get into the gas tank.
That too. And then it would just
Clog
become
up
some congealed, sticky mess.
the exhaust.
I find it, she started to shovel dust out of her home. That is crazy to me. Crazy.
It's like shoveling snow, but it's dust.
Right. Out of your house. Okay, I got two more poems. The visit. Mad Dog came by to see how we made out after the duster. He didn't come to court me. I didn't think he had. We visited more than an hour. The sky cleared enough to see Black Mesa. I showed him my father's pond. Mad Dog said he was going to Amarillo to sing on the radio, and if he sang good enough, they might give him a job there. You'd leave the farm? I asked. He nodded. You'd leave school? He shrugged. Mad Dog scooped a handful of dust like a boy in a sandpit. He said, I love this land, no matter what. I looked at his hands. They were scarless. Mad Dog stayed longer than he planned. He ran down the road back to his father's farm when he realized the time. Dust rose each place his foot fell, leaving a trace of him long after he'd gone. Based on the mood of this poem, how do you think Billy Joe is feeling about Mad Dog leaving?
Sad.
Yep. What makes you think she's sad, Melinda?
The fact that she said that you'd leave school for the job if they gave it to him.
What about that makes her seem sad, though?
She wanted Mad Dog to court her.
What happens if he leaves and gets a job in Texas? In Amarillo?
We'll never see him again.
Probably not. Freak show. The fellow from Canada, James Kingsbury, photographer from the Toronto Star way up there in Ontario, the man who took the first pictures of the Dion quintuplets, left his homeland and came to Joyce City looking for some other piece of oddness, hoping to photograph the drought and the dust storms. And he did, with the help of Bill Rotterdaw and Handy Poole, who took him from the sandiest farms and showed off the bonniest cattle in the county. Mr. Kingsbury's pictures of those Dion babies got them famous, but it also got them taken from their mother and father and put on display like a freak show, like a tent full of two-headed calves. Now I'm wondering, what will happen to us after he finishes taking pictures of our dust? Wow. So now she's worried that they're going to become some freak show for people to come oogle at and watch because this guy took their pictures. So these Dion quintuplets, they're a real thing. If you Google them, and they really did get taken from their parents because it was like completely out of the ordinary that a human woman would have 5 babies. Like having 2 babies for a human woman was a big deal. It still is a big deal. Like at one time. And so the fact that she had 5, they were put on display and they were made to be like this big spectacle. Super weird.
How were they put on display?
I don't know. Let me look it up. Let's see.
They're small children. They can't be in like a shop window or anything.
They die then.
Or can they?
I'm guessing they were just like shown off.
They dressed them up like dolls.
Okay, let's see. They were first quintuplets to have known to survived infancy. They are identical girls. That's the other crazy thing, that they're identical.
All of them?
All of them.
All of them girls too.
Well, yeah, they're identical. That means that
They look exactly the same.
right. And normally when you have multiples like that, they're called fraternal. So that's just,
Eternal.
yeah, this is the whole conversation you should have with your parents. Anyway, after 4 months with their family, custody was signed over to the Red Cross, who paid for their care and oversaw the building of a hospital for the sisters. Less than a year after this agreement was signed, the Ontario government stepped in and passed the Dion Quintuplets Guardianship Act, which made them wards of the Crown until 18. So they were owned by the government, basically. The government and those around them began to profit by making them a significant tourist attraction. Holy cow. That is creepy. They were an exhibition. Ugh. The parents were persuaded to agree on the advice of a doctor present at the birth and the family priest.
Scandalous.
Oh,
Why did they do that?
Because they can. What?
That's wrong.
Not fair. Not fair.
Really weird.
So the parents originally signed custody of the quintuplets over to the Red Cross for a period of 2 years to protect them from the contract. And in return, the Red Cross would cover all medical costs. So that might be why they had 5 kids that were premature. This included nurses' wages, supplies, and ensuring that enough milk was being shipped to the hospital. They also oversaw the building of a hospital specifically for the quintuplets. In February 1935, they traveled to Chicago as parents of world-famous babies and made stage appearances.
Roll in that cat.
Oh my God.
That's amazing.
What?
Madam Moderator, I actually know a family that has 27 kids.
That's a lot.
Right, but not at once.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna look up James Kingsbury.
I seen
You see
this
some pictures of these quintuplets.
babies at the same time.
They said only 2 of the quintuplets are alive
I
because
mean,
3 of them died of not old age, of diseases.
well, I mean, they'd be pretty old right now.
I thought that was a boy at first.
Like the 2 over there, it says The two over there, like under that picture, yeah,
They're all girls.
Oh my goodness.
Does that tell the
I thought that was just like a made-up story. Like,
No, it's a real thing.
children.
Dion James Charles?
What is his name? James Kingsbury.
I looked it up and it says the world record of having the most number of children was from 1707 through 1782.
It's 27.
Yeah, and they had 27
Children.
kids.
That's a lot.
Hold on.
Wait. It says 16
Steve?
pairs of twins.
This person had 16 pairs of twins and 7 sets of triplets and 4 sets of quadruplets. How?
Oh, good heaven.
What the?
Oh, good God.
Can't even believe it.
They could have
Having
died.
one pair of twins is enough. Yeah.
Okay.
The problem.
It says
I'm looking
69,
at-
not
okay,
27.
Oh, shoot.
Okay.
I'll get.
Guys,
Oh,
pause
that's
for a second. So I'm gonna end class because it's almost noon. Good job today. I'm not gonna have you do anything with out of the dust because you were doing figurative language stuff. So we will continue on Tuesday. I have office hours tomorrow, 2 to 3. If you have any questions, if you're having issues with iReady, make sure you finish those 2 iReadies. About half of the 5th grade is finished. The first one, so that's good. Let's everybody finish those up. And any last questions before I end this?
Do you know how much money comes out of your account?
No? Brilliant. All right. Have a good day. I'll see you on Tuesday.
Bye, Jude.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Bye.